The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. Tens of thousands of people have signed a petition to rename a one-block stretch of Fifth Avenue in New York City after former President Barack Obama. This is just so happens to be the block of Fifth Avenue where Trump Tower is. I actually got some emails overnight, Pat, from people saying that there's a proposal to rename Fifth Avenue to Barack Obama. And we're not talking about that. This is the process where, I mean, they have it in Boston where a certain stretch of a street will get some kind of symbolic name. And it's not even really the legal street address. It's just sort of a little separate, smaller street sign that usually goes up above the official street sign. Still funny that the idea is to do it right in front of Donald Trump's Trump Tower.
Oh, yeah. What a coincidence. I mean, that little stretch of street that they want to rename just so happens to be a part where Trump Tower's on.
Yeah.
I think it's good trolling. I don't think it's going to be successful. I guess New York City has a rule where if you're going to name a street after someone, that person has to be dead. But I suppose they could always amend that rule. There's a couple streets in Los Angeles that have been renamed after Barack Obama. And I don't think this is going to go anywhere. I think it's all just in good fun. But I like to see the trolling when I can.
And it actually did start out just as a joke. There was a fake news site that found that there was a petition back in January, and then they reported on it, and it just all kind of died out. But then people started tweeting about it, and now there actually is demand for this. And city council members are saying that they are going to look into it, but there's been no official response. And as you're pointing out, I think officially the rule is it needs to be somebody who is no longer alive. But what the reason that it's not obviously dead, even though it's supposed to be someone who's no longer alive, is that it's an arbitrary rule that is apparently not legally binding and can be sort of like ignored or made, exceptions can be made. I don't think it'll happen, but I think it's funny. And it's sort of like, my bigger thing here is, what do you think of this whole petition culture? Or, I'm thinking also of the Storm Area 51 thing that we've been talking about, where someone makes a Facebook event or a petition, and merely by its very existence, it can become a major news story and something that's reported on everywhere, when we just have some people who are just signing something in a way that's not potentially even legally viable. Like, I don't know, is society better off for that, worse off, same? I don't know.
I think it's good. We're expressing our First Amendment right? I mean, that's one of the 5 rights listed in the First Amendment, the freedom to petition.
Sure.
And it also reminds me of what the UK did a couple years back. I mean, I don't know how many people it was signed a petition to ban Trump from visiting the United Kingdom. I don't think that ended up being binding. I think he's gone on trips to the UK since then, but still, it's good to see kind of what the pulse is on a country. And that's kind of what you can get from petitions. And it's just so easy for them to spread nowadays with the internet. It's not like you actually have to have people sign up on paper. You can just kind of get it sent out, and in the interwebs, people can sign it, and that means you can get a lot more signatures than you'd otherwise be able to. And I think that's part of the reason why we're able to see a petition of 200,000 people signed on to rename Trump Tower Street after Barack Obama here.
So the Ohio State University is attempting to trademark the word the, according to an application that's been filed with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And the school wants to use the word the mainly on T-shirts, baseball caps, and hats. And this apparently is going to be problematic. A trademark lawyer says that this application has issues out of the gate. In order for a trademark to be registered for a brand of clothing, the trademark must be used in a trademark fashion. In other words, it has to be used on tagging or labeling of the products. In this case, just putting the word the on the front of a hat or shirt is not sufficient for trademark use. What do you think about this? There is every indication from legal experts that this is simply going to be refused for sure. But then there are others who say that if you actually were to restructure the application, it's possible that you could get it. I mean, it just seems crazy to me.
Well, I'm pretty sure that the word the is the most common in the English language. If it's not the most, it's like top 3. So it's a hard sell to be able to trademark that word, even in a context that has to do with, athletics or university. I don't think they have a shot in hell here. Maybe it's just they're, a way to raise school pride or like school awareness, because I don't know if you ever see college football games, but whenever they have like the starting lineups announced, or an NFL team has its starting lineups announced, and someone who plays on the team went to the Ohio State University, they always make sure to say the name of the school as the Ohio State University.
Right.
That's just their thing. They're not satisfied by just saying Ohio State. They have to say the Ohio State. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's totally fine if they want to put that word on a hat or a T-shirt, but to trademark it and say that other schools can't do the same thing, that's a bridge too far.
That's right. I mean, it would be I would want to be able to say I went to the University of Massachusetts, and the University of Massachusetts also might want to adopt that as a slogan or motto and put it on clothing and whatever else. And it's sort of hard to believe people actually care about this stuff, but college football is a really, really big thing in the United States, and it's big at OSU. And I guess this is how we end up in this situation. The OSU.
And I've seen a few other schools try to do this, but not to the extent that Ohio State does. The Ohio State. Pretty much every time that you hear someone say that they went to the Ohio State University, they put the in front of it. There's a few other schools that try to do the same thing, but not to the same extent.
What's another, like, I couldn't even name a single other one. Is there another specific one you can think of?
Oh, man. Not off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are other schools that try this too. It's just silly to me. Does it make it sound more official, like more prestigious by putting the in front of it? I just think it makes it sound more weird.
I think it only sounds more official if you pronounce it the as opposed to the. But what do I know? We're learning more and more about the possible use of MDMA, also known as ecstasy, to treat PTSD. And MDMA is the main ingredient in the club drugs ecstasy and Molly, but not recreationally, but in terms of medicinally. There is more and more research being done about small doses of pure MDMA, and sometimes not so small doses in some cases, taken, of course, under the supervision of specially trained psychotherapists. And this really seems to be promising. Scientists are testing exactly how it can be used in combination with psychotherapy to treat a severe form of PTSD that isn't responding to other treatments. And this is only available in some small clinical trials. The results of the small early trials are very positive. We actually interviewed Rick Doblin, was it, Pat? I believe his name is. Rick Doblin, who he works more, I don't remember, he's not just he's doing like LSD stuff as well, right?
Yeah, and mushrooms, I think, as well. But yeah, MDMA is another one of his interests, apparently.
So some of these MDMA trials are entering phase 3 of clinical trials at more than 12 different locations in the United States, Israel, and Canada. And this is actually not super surprising. There are stories actually from the 50s. I'm trying to think back now. We're in the 50s under medical supervision, even the 60s and 70s. Again, I think it was LSD, not MDMA, that was used in sort of pseudo-therapeutic ways. Listen, I get it. It's like you're just going to, in a legal way, beyond hallucinogens. Fine, we can understand the sort of cartoonish nature of that. But if it's actually taken seriously and combined with specially trained psychotherapists that understand what the treatment modalities are, it seems like this can be really, really effective.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, too, because these drugs are psychoactive, so they can change your perspective, not only when you're on the drugs, but after, when you're kind of recalling the experience and like allow you to see things through a different light. And I think that it's great to see that they're at least trying it. The trials, as you said, very, very effective so far, very promising results. Apparently, researchers found that 54% of the patients who took MDMA improved to the point where they no longer fit the PTSD diagnosis. And that number rises to 68% after a year of treatment. And so I don't know. I mean, like, do we even see comparable results like that with other drugs? I don't think we typically do. Like, this is very good stuff. I'm also, they're looking at this from like the slippery slope type side of things too, because after marijuana was legalized, people said that, well, maybe we'll next see medical alcohol or medical LSD. And I think maybe we are going down that slippery slope a little bit, but you have to take these things case by case. You have to take these things case by case, I think.
We've known about the at least possible medical uses of LSD and MDMA for a very, very long time. The slippery slope that I think is not a good one. There's that slippery slope. There's also, next thing you know, cocaine will be legalized for medical reasons. I'm not aware of cocaine or heroin fitting any of the possible categories that we're talking about here in terms of health benefits from sometimes small doses, sometimes larger doses. I just feel like it's an empty, slippery slope threat.
Yeah, well, the thing about the slippery slope is that you have to be able to take each thing and assess it individually, right?
Yes.
You don't have to worry about like what this could potentially lead to. Like after gay marriage became legal in the United States, people talked about how next people would try to marry in groups. Well, is that such a bad thing? Can you assess that individually and think about how that would affect society? I think you can. And you can also, people also made the slippery slope argument when it came to gay marriage, saying people would eventually marry dogs. And you can take that example and think about how that would affect society. So you look at all this stuff individually. You can't just write this stuff off as saying, oh, well, because marijuana was legalized, now we're down a slippery slope that is going to end who knows where. I mean, that I totally disagree with. But at the same time, if it was not for the fact that we legalized marijuana medically and recreationally in some places, that Denver, Colorado is looking into medical mushrooms now, I don't think we'd be able to see this change.
During the entire gay marriage debate, the one about next thing you know, people will be marrying their horses, was one of my favorites in just the height of stupidity, where people seem to forget that animals are considered property and can't sign contracts. Like it really doesn't matter what humans are doing. Unless animals all of a sudden are able to sign contracts, you don't have to worry about anybody marrying a horse.
Yeah, it's such a fringe thing. Like, I mean, it's such a cheap argument because there are so few people out there who actually want to marry their horse or marry their dog. And certainly you can find those people and make a big thing out of it. But, it's not even comparable to like the 5 to 10% of people who are gay in this country. And to just make that comparison is offensive, honestly.
It's quite frankly absurd on a number of different levels and offensive and just quite frankly extremely stupid. As far as the use of hallucinogens and other psychoactive drugs, the idea seems to be that what a lot of the benefit comes from, again, it's not just taking the drugs. As many people would probably know, just taking the drugs may not solve all of your problems or even any of them. But the idea is that some of the most effective psychotherapy techniques involve going back through the trauma. And there's different ways that this can be done. There's techniques called EMDR. There's DBT. There's CBT. There's a lot of different things that can be done. But that even if there is a benefit to going back through it, the process of doing so can be so traumatic because of the PTSD itself that the patient can't get through it. So the idea in many of these cases is if you have a well-trained psychotherapist, micro or not so micro doses of some of these psychoactive drugs can allow the person to get through the therapy process, which includes revisiting some of these traumatic events without having to bail because of the re-traumatization that it causes. And then the benefits of having done that in a therapeutic setting can sort of maintain once the effects of the drug have worn off. That's sort of like the gist of what's being proposed here, Pat. And it makes completely perfect sense. I completely support this, and hopefully the legal system will also catch up in allowing more of this to be done. That does it for today. New show, new bonus show tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.